Hey guys, part three of our Aergo training. Now remember, this is a product that is offered by Terradatum. It is currently at no cost to you. They look like they're going to charge starting in October. So get another month of no cost in while you can. Keep in mind that you sign up, as I've shown you in training one, with no cost, no credit card, no nothing. And as they go through, you have the opportunity to use this product to really effectively for both your listing side clients and your buyer side clients. And today in our training, we're going to be talking about how we can use that data in a specific set of appointment style. Okay. So once again, this is my initial platform. I'm going to go ahead and go down to a specific area, and that way I have an idea of what's going on in the marketplace. So to use this, I'm going to go ahead and use North Hills as my subdivision. So I'm going to break this down to subdivision. Now I can maybe narrow that down once I get into subdivision, but let's see what kind of numbers populate. So remember, I'm looking on a monthly basis based on prior month being my secondary category or my comparison range. So in that monthly range, I'm looking at 4 units that have come on market, or excuse me, 4 units that have sold, 9 units that went under contract, 8 new listings that have hit the market, and then I have my off market and my months of supply, which have changed not at all. Okay. Now, the thing about this report is that I want this to be a little more robust than that. This is all of North Hills in general. And the key is that I'm looking at a property that is on the upper side of North Hills. So I want to narrow this down a little bit. Okay. And I also am not getting a lot of data here. So I want to maybe open my range by timeline. So first off, I'm going to swing down, as I showed you in the previous training, how to use a polygon tool to break down what I'm actually looking for. So I'm going to pull everything from my what I would consider upper North Hills. I'm going to close that polygon. And when I do that, my sold listings goes down to 0, meaning that I have no months of inventory, which is kind of crazy. Now, when I bring that up, I'm going to bring up the inventory and information. Now, something I want you to take into account here, okay? You notice that this has no inventory that is currently there, but it does have 4 units that are currently under contract. If I swing over to my secondary indicators, I want you to realize that that does not mean that there's no inventory in the marketplace. It simply means that no inventory is currently either under contract or as a new listing in that timeline. Okay, so something to kind of take into perspective. But in this case, there actually is only 4 pieces of inventory total. So that's kind of crazy, but that is what it is. So we are looking at 4 pieces of inventory total, of which all are under contract. So this area of North Hills is currently in a great environment to maximize price. Okay, and that's the conversation that I'd be having with a listing person or with a listing client as I'm sitting there talking to them about what is going on in the marketplace. Now, on top of that, if I change this inventory up to maybe a quarter, or in this case, last 90 days or the last 12 months, that's going to change my numbers a little bit. Okay, so that's going to update numbers. I have my sold listings pop up to 4. I have my under contract listings go up to 7. And I have my new listings going up to 8. This means that inventory hitting the market over the time has been pretty valuable, okay? And this is last 90 days to previous 90 days, okay? So this is looking at what is actually going on in the marketplace. Now, as I'm looking at this, I want to start looking at things like trends and movement of activity, okay? I want to know what's going on in the marketplace, and I want to be able to present this data in a way that is going to be accurate for my client. Okay, now what that means, and by the way, I want to make sure that there is one point of reference here. This is not a buyer's market, obviously, but because there is no months of supply of inventory in this market right now, that is why it is defining itself as a buyer's market. If there were the actual months of inventory, the reason there's none is because there's no active inventory, right? There's nothing actually available, which means there's 0 months of inventory because there's nothing available. So just something I wanted to make sure that I highlight, that this is not obviously a buyer's market, and you'll need to explain that because this little tag does pop up when you download your report. Okay, so remember, here is our KMI detail, or key metric indicator detail, and this breaks down all the information. So this talks about what has happened in the previous year, what has happened today. or excuse me, previous 90 days, what has happened in the last 90 days. So June to September, that is current, and then March to June. We had a lot more inventory sell, but on that same point, we also had a lot more inventory. Okay, and that's something to take into account is that we had more inventory, therefore more things could sell. Whereas right now we have no inventory, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But sometimes statistically, that can look as a negative when it's actually a very big positive to the way of marketing this home. So here I am sitting with a client, and I say, "Hey, client, listen. Right now we are way light on inventory. We got nothing available. In fact, everything that we had available is currently under contract. And we added some new listings onto the market, but everything that we added has been stripped off the market based on the fact that it either got expired, withdrawn, canceled, something to that effect. So of the 8 new listings that have hit the market, everything's gone under contract, and we've had the ones that have sold in the previous market. We are dealing right now with a very high-end seller's market, meaning that there is no inventory, therefore you're going to create a frenzy when you put your house on the market. Now, I would do this in 2 fashions. First, I may have done this while I'm actually opening this up on my computer while I'm sitting in front of the client, so I can adjust based on what they're actually interested in. Okay, so I can actually narrow it down because anybody that lives in North Hills knows that if you live on Upper North Hills, it's a different price point than if you live on Lower North Hills. And the same thing goes to it. If they're living this side of Loma Casitas, they're going to also want you to just narrow it down to that area because this area would be different. Or they might even actually, you might be able to look at it like this and remove this actual vicinity and take it down to a specific information. So once again, take yourself down to North Hills and then break it down from here into 2 specific areas, right? So people that live over in this area or up in this area know that the value change is quite substantially different between right here all the way up to this street and then cut across here, this area, okay? And if I take into account another area as well, these areas are going to be different than where you'd be looking at in other respects. So breaking that down to a specific will have value in telling your client what's going on, but that might sometimes be actually need to be brought up and talked about while in the appointment. So having maybe a Wi-Fi on your phone or a Wi-Fi puck or something that you can connect to, that way you can show them this information in live nature, and they can help you ask you questions about, hey, what is this listing, which one did this sell. This brings up that information and you can pull up some details on it to show a Google map and some of the information, who sold it, when they sold it, the codes that they sold it with, and so on and so forth. So something to kind of take into account. It also will give you the MLS number if you need to grab that information quickly as well. Now, what happens whenever I actually start to run this report? So that's something to take into account. And I'm going to bring myself back to North Hills and readjust my numbers just so I can get back into what I was looking at. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to run a quick polygon from here to here, just for North Hills, Upper North Hills, if you will. So now I have my inventory. I have the last 90 days of inventory. I can look at a 3-month timeline of what's going on in the marketplace. And over here, I'm actually going to click on all these informational points. And I'm going to click on this little button here that's going to download either a key market indicator summary, which I'll do. And then I'm also going to go back and I'm going to do one in a full detail, which shows the data as well. So I have these 2 reports. The first report being the key market indicators with my information. Okay, so this is actually breaking down specifics with information. If you're really good at the explanation of information, this is a great tool, and this can walk you through what to talk about, when to talk about it, and also how to make this work in your benefit. The next one is kind of the little blander report. It's going to just give you some broad spectrums, okay? It's going to talk about the inventory of sold listings, over, under contract listings, and so on and so forth. But it will kind of give you that tool set that you can work on. Now, once again, obviously North Hills is in a little weird direction, so that's why there's no months of inventory. But that does not necessarily mean you can't explain that. You just need to make sure you explain it, okay? So something to kind of keep in mind. But guys, here's the key. If you use this information, you can start talking about things like pricing strategy. What is actually going to happen when you present this to the client is that they're going to be overwhelmed. That's just frank and honest. Unless they are an engineer or a mathematician, they're going to be overwhelmed by the information that you're giving to them. And more than likely, that's simply going to set you up for a benefit of adding value to them in the fact that you know your market knowledge. Okay. And by you knowing your market knowledge, what's going to be the benefit is that you're going to bring something of value to them because nobody is going to actually fill this out. In fact, I talked to the beta tester on Aergo the other day, and the only people that are signed up for this system are our agents, and that's just because we've been pushing it out pretty heavily. So my point is, guys, is that nobody else is going to be presenting this. And as I've talked about many a time, CMAs are only valuable if you delineate yourself and separate yourself from the pack. You have to show value in why they should suggest to go with you instead of with somebody else. Um, Guys, I hope that was valuable. I don't want to go too long. I wanted to kind of just break down what we need to do and how we need to present it. Like I said, I love this information. I'm a data nerd, so keep in mind that maybe this doesn't fit in your packet of tools because you're not comfortable with presenting it. That's fine, but I do want you to understand that this can be a very good indicator as to what the market is doing and knowing. For instance, prior to running this little report, I didn't realize that nothing was available in North Hills. And that now means that if we have something available that comes on North Hills, we can charge a premium, upwards of possibly as much as 5 to 10% premium on the house because somebody that wants to live in that neighborhood now needs to pay that premium in order to get there. That is the whole point of supply and demand. So these are things that we have to take into account and we have to put into perspective when we're working with a listing because a CMA is just value, but value is influxed by supply and demand. That's what defines if that value can be achieved. So, guys, thank you for your time. Part three, all over. If you guys have any other questions, don't hesitate. Keep in mind there's part one where we book and set up a Aergo account. Part two is where we talk about the search criteria and some of the actual graphs that are offered. And then part three, we kind of just break down how to use that data and get down to specifics for the property that you're looking for. Thank you for your time, guys. Have a great day. See you later.